You know that we have a clock that is called the clock to the end of humanity. And basically, in fact, we are at a point that never been reached before. Even during the Cuban crisis in the 1962, we never been so low. And that is the reason why I am very, very concerned regarding the environment. If you're listening, and especially in France, because don't forget, Macron try, in fact, to be as much influent as possible, because his project is to make sure that most of the countries are going to disappear within this kind of, how to say, Cerber, you know, this mythologic beast in the Greek, in the ancient Greek time, with several head, several tail, and so basically this stuff has absolutely no sense on a cultural, on a linguistic, on the historical, and on the economical point of view. But he wants to become the king of a kingdom that does not exist, and he will do any kind of provocations in the way that he will be achieving his goal. If you look at the poll of Macron today in France, he is at 11%. At the beginning of his mandate, he was saying that if he was touching less than the majority, he will be leaving office. Today, he's not even at less than the majority. He is at the less of minority never ever touched during the entire Fifth Republic. So basically, this guy is doing any kind of artifact necessary to hook on the power, when even the army and our generals, they start to express explicitly, when you know that generally in France we have a tradition, the military people do not have the right to open their mouth. They are here to execute. And what we're seeing is major retaliation in regard of the behavior that Macron is providing toward the global geopolitical situation. We are at a very high risk, very, very high risk. And actually, I need, in fact, to report to you a conversation that I have had, in May and in June, because I went 2 times in Russia. And I met with the former economic advisor of Vladimir Putin, Mr. Sergei Gladziev. He's handling today the relationship between Belarus and Russia. And I do believe that they are all working together in the way that they will be merging, because this is the same language, the same culture. But on a geopolitical point of view, to stay alive in a so hostile environment when you are 9.5 million people, it would be extremely difficult. And I do believe that one of these days, Lukashenko will accept, in fact, the merging between the 2 countries. But to come back to what Gladziev was telling me, and he was very explicit and very honest with me, he said, you know, as a day of today, we do not have any confidence with whatsoever the Occident, the West, will be deciding. And we are playing our own card. Of course, Trump has been playing around, in fact, to propose through Steve Witkoff a sort of settlement, because Witkoff and Dmitriev are knowing each other. In the United States, they were working in the same company. It was a hedge fund company, and they know each other. So basically, there are some very specific relationship that make me think that Russia would be willing to make some concession. But in regards of what's happening in Europe, and in regard of whatsoever is announced in the media by those pseudo leaders, we understand one thing is they will try to do whatsoever necessary to make sure that the settlement is not going to happen. And if you look at the proposal that the European Union has been putting together, this is a shame. A shame. Since the beginning, what was the problem? the position of Ukraine, in fact, to be part of NATO. Do you see Russia being allowed, in fact, to install some ICBM missile base in Mexico or in Cuba? We already know what has been happening 50 years ago, 70 years ago. Those guys, they are trying, in fact, to do exactly the opposite, meaning an upside-down Cuba. And they are provocative within, in fact, all the declaration that they are putting together. So basically, we need to be very, very careful. And I heard the story of optimism, pessimism, and I have been understanding all of you guys are very pessimistic regarding, in fact, the resolution of the conflict. Am I right?
Well, actually, we were discussing the Finnish independence, because today is the Finnish Independence Day. So we were discussing whether we feel optimistic or pessimistic about the Finnish independence, and also the future of Finnish language, because as you may know, Finnish language is a minority in the world.
Okay, but, so basically, okay, so let me finalize, in fact, the development I was putting together. I've been reading with a lot of attention the proposition that the American government has been putting together. There are different points that cannot be accepted at all. There is absolutely no negotiation in regarding of this point. Example, to put a buffer zone within, in fact, the remainder of different oblasts that are not fully under the control of Russia. This is the red line, because on a legislation point of view, those territories are attached completely to Russia. So basically, this is like meddling within a state that is sovereign state, and to declare that external entity would be managing whatsoever is happening within their lands. That is like a red line. I've been reading the one of the European Union. This is just like stupid, absolutely stupid. And they are showing a very strong will to make sure that the negotiations are going to collapse. Nevertheless, I have been discussing lately with Gladiev, and I said, this is what we are going to propose. I'm going to constitute a pool of people that would be able, in fact, to propose a new plan that is going to be a sort of merging, but better articulated. Because when you are trying to put some plans, in fact, to settle such a conflict, first of all, you need to understand the source of this problem. You need to understand how to articulate the solution in regard of a sort of historical and geographical globality. And you need to express where the problem is coming from. And this is the document that I have been producing. And now, as soon as I have been finalizing it yesterday, I'm constituting a pool of people, and I'm very glad, in fact, I'm going to be able, in fact, to discuss with you guys, because I am going to propose it through the different people interfering within the platform today as interviewed people. And you will tell me, what do you think about it? And what we will do after that, because I've been discussing with a lawyer in Paris, and he's going to propagate the document as soon as he will be ready, and there will be different opinion regarding what is it in it. And we will propose a new diplomacy of Europe. We are going to impose ourselves on the international platform, and we will say, guys, you are not able to understand the problem. You are not able to solve it because you are completely putting on the side the different problem that Ukraine is putting on the table right now. Example, the global security of Europe. Ukraine has been becoming an XXL Kosovo. Everybody within the platform, I'm sure, understand what Kosovo is about. I've been visiting this pseudo country. What I have been seeing there is, by my own observation, this is a platform that is supporting the human trafficking, drug trafficking, arm trafficking, prostitution trafficking. This is not acceptable that we will be integrating within the European Union such an entity that is going to cause massive trouble. Massive. Because don't forget one thing, the amount of arms and weapons that has been flowing to Ukraine is such that now there is a numbers of gangs that has been constituted that are ready, in fact, to raid inside of Europe and cause massive problem. On top of it, we know that all the extremist groups within Ukraine, the Azov Battalion, the C-14, the private sector, have been collaborating with ISIS, meaning, in fact, terrorist organization. And those people, they are trained right now. They have access, in fact, to weapons. What is telling you they are not going to try to destabilize our countries, our institutions, and so on, our civilization, and cause massive problems. So basically, the way that I am envisioning the resolution of the conflict is to address the real problems that we are going to face in the next 10 years. You see? So basically, as soon as the document is ready, I will gather a maximum of people from all over the place in Europe. I'm going to publish it. I am going to gather, in fact, the opinion of each people that are going to participate, and we will constitute like a major geopolitical force, and we are going to impose ourselves. What do you think about that, guys?
Olli, do you want to say something? Because my expertise on the Ukraine situation isn't great. Or Pauli, do you have something to say?
Well, there was many interesting points, but I have this problem. I have some family issues or things here I have to go to do, unfortunately. So I think that I don't. Yeah, but that was very interesting. I just say that this is really. I agree that this is really dangerous situation now because we are coming into some kind of climax. We are approaching some kind of moment when the maximum danger. And everything you said, I agree with the danger for the Europeans, what this means. But unfortunately, now I have to go. I will come back to the stream. I will be just viewing it after I take this thing, but I can't join. I will just be listening. I want to say something in Finnish. Is it okay before I leave? Eli kaikille sinne, jotka katsoo suomalaisille pimeeseen kylmään Suomeen täältä palmujen alta, kuitenkin toivotan hyvää itsenäisyyspäivää, mitä se kellekin tarkoittaa. Samaten Ollille, jos Sakari on siellä, niin kiitän tästä keskustelusta. Tässä oli mielenkiintoisia pointteja. Ja sitten vielä superkiitos meidän Tikkikselle tämän jutun järjestämisestä. Tämä oli mun mielestä mahtava idea, ja mä ajattelin, että tämmöisiä voisi olla enemmänkin, että meitä olisi vähän enemmän tässä, saisi kuunnella toisten kommentteja ja sitten keskustelua. Tämä oli tosi hieno juttu.
Kiitos.
Mutta
kiitos, kun kävit.
Täältä sanon kaikille nyt näkemiin, ja kyllä me varmaan palaillaan sitten taas jossain vaiheessa.
Joo,
niin.
Arrivederci. Ja sähän voit itse asiassa, jos ehdit, niin kirjoittaa sinne chattiin, jos sulle tulee kommentteja, jos et pääse lähetykseen.
Aivan. Joo, mä tulen
takaisin sieltä kautta. Voit sä myös tulla tänne, jos sä pääset takaisin striimillekin.
Mä pääsen noin tunnin päästä takaisin, mutta mä tuun tuonne chattiin ehkä sitten vaan, kun sulla on jotain vieraita ja kuuntelen tätä loppua, mitä te keskustelette, niin tehdään nyt sillä tavalla. Joo, hyvä pointti. No niin, mutta sanon täältä tässä vaiheessa näkemiin kaikille katsojille ja muille.
You know, the European populations have major responsibility. We have a very small amount of people, extremely corrupted, that are totally controlled by the deep state inside of America, that have been deciding, in fact, to take over the well-being of the population. 3 weeks ago, I have been hearing a European deputy that was questioning the management of von der Leyen and asking her where the $723 billion in the euro dollar in the budget have been disappearing. And there was no answer. So basically, when you know that we have lots of organizations that are allowing us, in fact, to control the different flows of funding all over the world, and especially in Europe, how it is possible that $723 billion would disappear. I do believe that Ukraine has been becoming a money laundering platform, and most of the people managing Europe are taking advantage of this platform to fill up their pocket. And that is the reason why we have two scenarios possible here. Either the population in Europe are retaliating against this mafia organization, because we are not talking about an institution anymore. We are talking about an institutional mafia that has been robbing their citizens at the point that this is absolutely outrageous. Look at what's happening in France today. A member of my family is ICU chief. ICU is for this is a very specific intensive care unit that is taking care of the patient when they arrive in the ambulance in a very distressed mode. He's telling me that over 20 ambulances coming in front of the hospital every day, 10 to 15 of the patients are not taken care of, and they are dead in the ambulance after 10 hours. So we're arming a country that is a rogue state called Ukraine, detrimentally to our own population. This is not acceptable anymore. So basically, what I am saying here is that populations in Europe need to retaliate. The way this is happening in Croatia right now, the way this is happening in Bulgaria. Have you been seeing what is happening in Sofia today? The last 3-4 days, all the Gen Z generation is in the street and they are breaking everything. They do not want to hear about the euro because this is going to generate a level of inflation that is going to crush completely the buying power of the population. They want to get rid of all those politicians that are completely corrupted and that are filling their pockets and goes against, in fact, their interest. They want to have economies that are running, when with the story of the sanction, every economy in Europe is collapsing. In Croatia, I have a very good friend, Andrija Klajic. He's a journalist, and his blog and his channel is the fourth most popular in Croatia. And the government has been asking, in fact, to shut him down. Facebook has been locking his account. We have been retaliating to the point he went to the Senate and they were obliged, in fact, to re-establish his vector. So you can imagine what is going to happen next when they are going to federalize, in fact, all the entities constituting. Look at what has been happening in Romania. They were choosing a president, and the European Commission has been meddling within the election by paying the federal judge in the way that they will be canceling the application of this guy. Do you call this a democracy? It is not a democracy. It is a kleptocracy that is working for itself. So basically, these guys, they want to have a sort of layout of management, and everybody else is going to become, in fact, their slaves. So that is not acceptable anymore. Either we do it democratically and we are retaliating against them, or we are going to do whatsoever, in fact, the Bulgarians, they are doing. We go in the street, we all converge to Brussels, and we are putting them down. It's as simple as this. I've been interviewing different kids lately in Sofia, in Burgas. You know what they were telling me? That on the 11th and the 12th, they will go to Sofia to burn the parliament. Do you hear me? They want to burn the parliament. They are so sick and tired of this corruption that they want to get rid of it by the fire. It's symbolic, you know. When a population is saying, now, enough is enough, we are going to destroy you, you better be careful, you better be listening. So basically, what we are saying here on a global scale is that we have this global oligarchy that is managing, in fact, this entity of Europe, that want to put a hold on all the resources in the world and want to transform us as slaves. Lately, I have been hearing that the 5,000 biggest fortune in the world has been building bunkers in very remote places. New Zealand, Hawaii. Why? Because they know that with the wind current and the ocean current, if there was a nuclear war between powers, they will be completely safe and they will stay alive. So basically, we have in front of us this layout of politicians that are ready, in fact, to sacrifice their population because they know they can survive, in fact, what would be happening if the worst was on the table, which I believe at the end of the story, they will be suffering even more than us because we are going to die instantly. But when you do not have the infrastructure necessary to sustain your living, you don't have the supply, you don't have anything, and the world is collapsing, what is the point of humanity? There is no humanity anymore. We have today a threat. It's called artificial intelligence. If you look at what's happening in the US, due to economical context, the companies, they are taking the pretext of AI development to fire people massively. It doesn't mean that AI is not going to modify the way that we are going to run business. But from my analysis point of view, what I know is that 15 to 18% of all the jobs are going to disappear. What are we going to do with all those people? So basically, we are going to see a layout of people that would be accessing job because they would be smart enough to access this kind of technology, to use it for their own means. But look at those who are not going to be able to reconvert themselves to another type of business. I'm going to take a very small example. I have a friend of mine, he has like an agency, a design agency for advertisement. He was hiring 4 guys. And he told me, I've been firing everybody. I said, well, why you do that? So I've been finding some platform on the internet, in fact, to build materials, movies, pictures, and whatsoever related to marketing. And whatsoever those guys were doing in 1 to 2 weeks, now I can do it in less than 2 to 3 minutes. So basically, his return on investment is that there is 4 salaries that he's going to put in his own pocket. You say, why should I hire those people? Because I can do the job, I can do it 10 times faster than them. And on top of it, I don't need to pay state tax on top of every employee. But there are some intrinsic consequences in regard of AI. If you're shrinking the workforce, what is the first problem? The state budget is going to shrink because the companies are not going to pay so much state tax on top of employees. They are not going to collect so much VAT. They are not going to be able, in fact, to ask those who have been losing their job, in fact, to pay tax. So basically, if you cumulate all of this, the state budget might be shrinking by 25 to 30%, which is enormous. When you look at, for example, United States, that is a broke state. The debt they have to reimburse every year is about $1.2 trillion. You have the Social Security, that is one of the line item within the budget, which is the biggest. And the second biggest line item in their budget is the debt. So when you're putting all those mechanisms together, I am just wondering, and this question I am asking myself very seriously, if they are not trying to make sure that this war is going to happen to shrink, in fact, the human resources, because they know their power is going to be jeopardized when 15 to 18% of the job are going to be destroyed. So guys are going to be in the street, and they are going to knock at the door to ask them, in fact, to justify the situation. I'm not sure that this is going to happen, but this is a scenario we can envision, you see? And this is what Klaus Schwab was describing in his book. This is what he was saying. They have been trying with COVID, because COVID is a psyops from the CIA. And actually, I have a scoop for you guys. July 29 and 30th, I was in front of the CIA. And I was in front of advisors of senators and congressmen of the United States. I was in a private meeting in England, in the University of Cambridge. And we have been testing those people. And they were, in fact, the goal of the conference was about, in fact, to find solution to solve the conflict. And what sort of proposition they were putting together was not about to solve the conflict. It was to make it even worse. Example, they were envisioning to build a belt of security from Finland to Poland, pile up a massive amount of weapons and servicemen in the way that they will be containing Russia, when in fact Russia has absolutely no desire to invade Europe. And the numbers are showing it. You know, 4 years after the beginning of the end of the conflict, because 2022 was the beginning of the end of the conflict. It was not the beginning of the conflict. This conflict has been starting in 2014, when Kiev has been attacking massively Lugansk and Donetsk, that was not accepting the coup of Maidan that has been occurring under my balcony in Kiev, because I was living there. I saw everything. So basically, what is happening here is very simple. Those guys, they want to make sure that they will be shrinking, in fact, the workforce, because this is the way that they are envisioning, the way that civilization need, in fact, to evolve. And this is very scary, because those guys who are deciding for everybody else, they have absolutely no idea of the consequence of a war. They are, I would call them, you know, like this kind of bully kids in the school garden. They don't know what they are doing. They don't understand it. They have absolutely no consciousness of what would be the consequences out of it. And they think this is a game, but it's a very dangerous game. So basically, what we need to do as Europeans, we need to make sure that this very small amount of people would be under our own control. And we need, in fact, to impose our way of seeing things, because this is our well-being, this is our lives, this is our lifestyle, this is our culture, and this is our way of seeing things. And to come back to this meeting I was attending this summer, the discussion I had with those people has been scaring me the hell. Because what I was understanding is that as they were living about 8,000 to 9,000 kilometers from, in fact, the European continent, if there is a major war destroying everything, they don't care. They're safe. So basically, we see two forces here. We see the people within, in fact, the new administration in the US that try to compose and to make sure that we are going to stop this mess. And we have a layout of people with transversal organization that are doing everything possible because they have been able, in fact, to penetrate governments by putting at the right place, in fact, their own guys to make sure they will be achieving their crazy, psychotic project. You see? And we are at a tipping point now. It's either we are going to stop 1,000 people, or this is 450 million people that are going to suffer. It is our responsibility right now to take over on a political point of view and to crush those people on the knees. We do not have any other choice, any other opportunity to make sure we are all going to stay alive. Because my understanding of the behavior of Macron, who is a transgressive individual, and on every point of view, is that he will dare to do any kind of provocation in the way that the worst would be happening. I saw the way that he has been handling the yellow jacket. I saw the way that he has been handling the people that didn't want the vaccination. The injection of genetic treatment is completely different because a real vaccine is not constituted of RNA. And on top of it, they have been modifying it. It's not even RNA-M, it's RNA-2M. And actually, in fact, this structure, generally, RNA-M stay inside the cell, it's read by the kernel of a cell, and it's destroyed after the fabrication of a protein. But because they have been modifying it, it stays inside the cells. And it continues to produce, in fact, the spike protein. This is why people continue to die after the injection. You see? So basically, those guys that are in power, and especially Macron, has been, in fact, pushing to achieve his project. Don't forget one thing. The story of COVID-19 was a pseudovirus in the way that after keeping the people during 2 years in fear, they would be able, in fact, to control everybody. And this is the way that they have been introducing the provocation to Russia, and nobody has been saying anything. And here we are, 4 years after, to the point where European Union want to rearm themselves, and they are injecting massive amount of money within, in fact, the armament industry. And I do believe that in the budget that has been disappearing, this famous $723 billion, I am absolutely sure there is a gigantic part of it that has been flowing within, in fact, the military industry in the way that they will be achieving their goals. But they have another problem. Who are going to operate the weapons? In France, in Germany, in Spain, in Italy, nobody wants to go. We have been hearing a general in France 1 week, 1 week ago, saying, "Oh, French population need to sacrifice their kids." Do you realize that? They need to sacrifice their economy. Whoa, 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 whoa. We need to sacrifice our kid for who? For global oligarchy? For Macron? For a gang of crooks that are plunging in the kind of candies, that are pumping, in fact, our capacity of sustaining our economy, sustaining our well-being? It's out of question. And actually, there is like a massive protestation in France against, in fact, this declaration. Even generals have been raising against this general-in-chief that dare, in fact, to open his mouth when it was not his role. Macron has been using this guy because he was like a fuse in case of the things will be drifting in the position he cannot control. He will fire him and he will be safe. And I do believe that in the next year or so, because this is 1 year before the next election in France, Macron is going to trigger some provocation with Russia because he wants to stay in power. He wants to stay after 2027, after the election. So basically, he will modify the constitution, or he will trigger this, the Article 16 in the way that he will cancel the election. This case is extremely dangerous. And I'm going to explain at which point. Bercy is the economic ministry, okay? Within this ministry, 30 people has been declared committing suicide in 6 months. Have you ever heard within one country 30 employees of a Ministry of Economy committing suicide? It's impossible. But what I suspect, and the suspicion is enormous, is that they have been seeing where the money was flowing to. They have been seeing the fraud. They have been saying that Macron was certainly protecting a certain numbers of people, a certain numbers of fortune. And he don't want those people to speak, because as soon as he will be out of office, those people that would have been able, in fact, to open their mouth. Or if there was like a strong will to cancel the election, they would have been speaking and make sure that this guy would be dismissed and pushed to the justice. You see, we had 3 agents of DGSE, its internal services. There has been suicide. One of my friends within the DGSE, meaning external services, and I was supposed, in fact, to meet with him 2 days after he was committing suicide with an arm gun, no fingertips on the arm, and no gloves. How you can kill yourself if you are not holding the gun? It's impossible. We have a general that has been disappearing in very suspicious condition. So basically, what we are observing here is that this guy has been detaching a group that is eliminating any kind of threat on a political point of view. So basically, and actually, I'm very scared for myself. I am very clear on this issue. I have absolutely no intention to commit suicide. But in regard of the fact that around me, 4 people has been killed, I can question myself, and people that were kind of close. So basically, the situation that we are observing is extremely dangerous. And you see the way that Russia has been reacting in regard of all the declaration that has been made within the European Union. As those guys, they are saying, oh, we can install NATO inside of Ukraine after the conflict, which is one of the problems. Russia has been saying, be careful. If you really want to trigger a conflict, we are ready. Because all those little manager, regional manager, because they are not even leaders, they haven't been understanding the extent of what mean the Oreshnik Roketa. This stuff can destroy Europe entirely with 1 missile in 9 minutes. 9 minutes. This is impossible to intercept missile. It goes up, down, right, left. So basically, there is no trajectory that is ballistic. You cannot anticipate from where and by where he will go. It will go, sorry. And he can distribute 6 re-entry vehicles, which are like smaller missile that can distribute 6 warheads of 1 megaton. That means 36 warheads that can destroy most of the cities in Europe. I don't know if you realize what does it mean. It means that in 9 minutes, there is no life in Europe. And if you're triggering this kind of weapons, there will be a gigantic EMP, it's electromagnetic pulse, that is going to spread. And there will be no electricity during at least 1 week. How do you want to react when we know that most of the system, anti-missile system, take about 20 minutes, in fact, to have the capacity to understand what is happening and how to send a countermeasure to stop such a missile. But due to the nature of the trajectory of this missile, you cannot do absolutely anything. So basically, 9 minutes, no Europe. Is it what we want? Is it what we want? Because there will be no life. And that is certainly the reason why those 5,000 families, very, very rich families, they have been building facilities all over the world, very far from any critical centers that could be exposed to a nuclear attack. You see? So if you have any question right now, I would be glad, in fact, to answer. We can actually discuss the economical situation in the US that might be one of the trigger of the big problem. Today, United States is ruined. It's completely bankrupt.
Yes.
Despite the government debt, if you look at every citizen debt today, you are looking at $120,000 per head per capita. It is unsolvable. On top of it, since 2008, most of the big banks, they do not have the right for titrization of mortgage. So basically, this titrization mortgage story has been shifting to private investing firm, the BlackRocks, the KKR, Apollo, and so on. And they did exactly the same thing. But in 2008, the debt of America was representing $10 trillion. Today, it's $38 trillion. If you look at the period between the internet bubble crisis and the subprime crisis, the debt in US have been increasing by $2 trillion. But from 2008 to today, 2025, the debt has been increasing by 4, a factor 4, from $10 trillion to $38.6 trillion. Even better to understand. The last 8 months, American debt has been increasing by $1 trillion. The last 2 weeks, you hear me, the last 2 weeks, the American debt has been increasing 600 billion, meaning it's 60% of $1 trillion. This is, what does it mean? It means that, in fact, they have been igniting a debt spiral that cannot be solved at all. And the consequences is that they have to flow T-bonds with short-term yield at the point that this is very scary. But before the beginning of the end of the conflict, 2022, China has been getting rid of $850 billion assets in T-bonds. Today, when the debt is coming to maturity, they are not renewing it. Japan was doing carry trade, meaning emitting yen at 0 interest rate to buy the American debt and to bring back home in fact, the interest of the debt at 4.5%. But today, their currency has been collapsing. And basically, they have been deciding to stop to buy US debt. They cannot do it anymore. So basically, this is one of the biggest fund buyer of the T-bonds. Who is going to buy the US debt? Who? Nobody. Europe has been buying a lot. But if United States is crashing, we are down the drain. To come back to the titrization of debt, those private investor companies, they have been doing titrization of MBS, meaning mortgage-backed security, and ABS, asset-based backed security, meaning they were taking the debt for goods and services, like buying a car, taking a loan for studying, or whatsoever you can buy at Target or Best Buy or whatsoever. And they have been compacting those debt into a sort of package that they started to introduce on the market. So basically, in 2008, this bubble, this, I would say, credit bubble, was with mortgage, was representing $800 billion. Today, this problem has been increasing by the double. The debt, the titrization has been reaching $1.5 trillion. And if you see the number of people that are declaring bankruptcy, Chapter 9 or Chapter 11 for the companies, because they cannot reimburse their debt. And due to two things. The screen company, in fact, to leverage the debt of American people through a mechanism called BNPL, buy now, pay later. So basically, you had a bunch of companies that were proposing these kind of services. And of course, you know, Americans, they like to buy, they like to spend. So they were subscribing to loans for one item through different companies. And they are making like treat of cavalry from a company to another one. And you had also another type of companies called EWA, Earned Wage Access. Earned Wage Access is very simple. As those guys, their credit score were so low, they were not able, in fact, to use the credit card. So they were asking an advance on salary through, in fact, this kind of mechanism. US is bankrupt at every level. And when this debt crisis of ABS is going to explode due to market condition that is over-evaluated right now, if you look at the full capitalization of all the companies in the US, it represents 225% of the GDP. During the internet bubble, this rate was about 145%. So basically, they have been almost doubling. The conclusion is the following. The globalists, they have the finger on the button. They can trigger this crisis whenever they want. And this is what they do generally. I do believe that the risk is going to increase around April, May. Because don't forget that 4 months down the line, there is the midterm in the US. If this crisis is wiping out the middle class, Trump is going to lose one or two of the chambers. The Dems are going to take over. And this is that moment that is going to be extremely dangerous. Because the Dems, they want this conflict. They want it. One, to solve, in fact, the problem of insolvency and the debasing of the dollar. And second of all, because they want to decrease the population. And they want to solve their debt. So basically, the next period that we are going to go through is the most dangerous in the humanity. If the Dems, they are taking over during the next midterm in the US, you can be sure that Trump is going to be wiped out. You wouldn't be able, in fact, to do anything in terms of policy. And this is why he's accelerating his agenda to destroy most of those little managers in Europe. He wants to solve this conflict of Ukraine, but he don't. If you would, he's not putting together all the parameters necessary to do so. So basically, what we are going to go through is a very, very scary period. We need to monitor it, and we need to interfere. We need to make sure that, in fact, those guys that want to trigger the unthinkable wouldn't be able, in fact, to do it. You see, it can be at any means, because during the Second World War, there was very few. First World War, there was few people that has been deciding the death of millions and millions of individuals. And today, the population, because we are the numbers, and they cannot do anything against us. They cannot do anything against 5 to 10 million people that would be going to Brussels and say, now you stop. You see, we need to show them that the one that have the power is the people. Because most of the constitution in the world are made of this. It's the power for the people, with the people, and
by the people.
We need to, and by the people. We need to make sure we are leveraging this gigantic power capacity. It's not through election, because they are crooking them. It is not through, in fact, parliament, because most of the parliament, they don't have the right to say anything. Look at what's happening in Brussels. Who is deciding? One person. It's not the parliament. Parliament is just opening his mouth, and after she does whatsoever she wants. Von der Leyen. And actually, you know, she has a murky background. If you look at her father, you look at her aunts, that we are very, very close to Hitler. You can see, in fact, where she comes from, how she has been educated, and what she wants to achieve. So basically, we need to make sure we are going to show them who is in charge. Voilà.
Yeah, actually, I didn't. I haven't been thinking about this possibility of nuclear war anymore so much. Before I was thinking about it, but I thought that basically the war in Ukraine was not to trigger a nuclear war, because I just assumed they're not that crazy. I assumed the Ukraine war has been kept going on because basically they just want to hold on to power themselves, because an external enemy is great if you have internal problems in the EU. So as I was assuming that they only want to use it to gain more political power and maybe not to trigger a nuclear war.
Well, you know, look at the way they are behaving. They do everything possible to make sure that this is not going to happen. The war in Ukraine is just a pretext. It is a pretext to the next step. And this pretext to the next step, at a point in time, you know, when there is escalation on the verbal point of view, at a point in time, there will be a mistake. Look at whatsoever is saying the admiral that is in charge of the group of decision within NATO. He said, we need perhaps to think about to make a preemptive strike that would be defensive. Look at the vocabulary they are using. A preemptive strike is an attack. It's not a defense.
Yes.
And they are associating the preventive, which is like a massive provocation that can trigger the unthinkable. Because, you know, in Russia, they have a system called the aftermath. If they are getting hit, immediately and automatically, there will be a retaliation that you cannot stop. Even if Moscow, you chop the head of Moscow, immediately the system is going to take over and retaliate against any system that has been attacking. And it will be massive. because they estimate in their nuclear doctrine that if there is a preemptive attack, it means that, in fact, the center of command has been completely wiped, and therefore whoever has been doing this should be eliminated. So, provocation, language provocation, and so on and so on and so on, at a point in time, there will be an incident. And, Macron wants this incident because his political mean is to cancel the election. And to cancel the election, you have just two ways to do it. Either you change the constitution, this is not going to happen. Nobody is going to accept in France to make sure that this guy is going to stay in power because he represents absolutely nobody. And the second one is Article 16. Article 16 is triggered if a configuration on a geopolitical point of view or internal point of view is justifying to install the state of emergency and to cancel any kind of election because he needs to stay in power, to take the decision he estimates being the right one, when it is not, because he has absolutely no credibility and no legitimacy. That is the reason why I'm saying, be careful. He is a very dangerous man.
Mm-hmm.
He is transgressive. Anything that you can, for yourself, estimate is not right, it is not moral, he will do it. Because he likes provocation.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the ceremony of the Olympic. It was disgusting.
Yes.
He has been putting a naked man. There was another guy in short, and his genitals were coming out of the short. He was making a gesture to decapitate a little girl. What the hell is this? Is that the representation of humanity for the Olympics? He has been humiliating us. He has been humiliating France. He has been putting the shame on our nation for generation. The day after that famous day of this demonstration of LGBT, whatsoever you can call it, I had on the phone the advisor of the Prime Minister of Malaysia, which is a Muslim state. They were outraged. They say, you know what? What you have been showing on TV is disgusting. It is just disgusting. People were just offended. And those guys were bragging, oh, look how our Olympics are great with this ceremony and this and that. I'm telling you, he's a transgressive individual, and he will do everything possible to make sure he will stay in power. And
the problem is about Macron for most of us who are outside of France, like me and my other guests. Well, actually, probably Sakari and Olli, they understand Macron a lot better. But in general, Finns, I think, who understand anything about politics, they just think Macron is a kind of buffoon. They don't think he's a serious guy, so they don't see him as a dangerous man, you know?
It's a mistake.
Yes.
It's a very big mistake. Very, very big, because don't forget one thing. Who is participating to the second biggest part of the budget in Europe? It's France. He decided. And
yes.
Despite the fact that your perception is that he's a buffoon, and you're right, because he's a buffoon, but he's a very dangerous buffoon.
Yes.
Because he's in charge, he's in power. And he has a team of people that are extremists in their way of seeing things, because they are not looking after the well-being of their population. They are looking after keeping the power, and that's it. And when you are dealing with this kind of individual, you need to be very careful, because they would be able, in fact, to do any kind of things to realize, in fact, their means. Remember what I told you about all the assassinations. When, during the Fifth Republic, we have been seeing such a thing? Never.
So I think we could maybe discuss also the situation of the EU, because what we're seeing right now is a lot of censorship in the EU, and I think Elon Musk was just fined, was it $120 million? So can you talk about this? Do you see that this is used as a pretext to create the final federal state and grab final power in the EU, or do you see this succeeding or failing?
Well, everything is going to depend on the resolution of the conflict, because all those people right now, they are in panic. They see that the situation is drifting. They see that they are powerless. They see they are getting humiliated by most of the leaders in the world. Look at what has been happening in Dubai with it was during the last meeting of President Trump within the Knesset. He was saying, "Oh, Manu, where are you? You are not on the picture." There was a strong will for humiliation, and this is what is happening. So basically, those guys, looking at the fact that the power is just drifting from their hands, they are trying everything possible to make sure that the negotiations are going to collapse. Don't forget what is their goal. Europe is just the first step. The first step, if you look at what's happening within the European Union, it's like an open air project for the globalism. They want to make sure they globalize, they federalize Europe. They want to make sure that Russia is going to collapse, because they want to control all the resources, but also to increase their power. They will put like a puppets inside at the heads of Russia, and then say, "Oh, you see, we have been conquering most of the part of the world." Trump has been understanding that this cannot fly, because this is against its own people. He sees what the globalists they want to put together to put control on the population. That was the means of the wokeism, to force people to accept what is unthinkable, unacceptable on their moral point of view, on their way of looking at things, and the way they are perceiving the world. You see? And you understand that the guys like Vladimir Putin has a very straight view of how Russia needs to evolve, like Xi Jinping, like Modi in India. But you have still within the European Union the mentality of neo-colonialism. They want to dominate instead of looking at other countries in an equal manner. If you look at the multilateralism, the way that it's implemented within the BRICS, any members is estimated as equal, and not like a dominant position where there is no common ground that converge to the mutual interest.